Hello and welcome back to Nostalgia Rewind, the series where I take a look back at some of the games I feel most nostalgic for and see how they hold up now. Today I'll be looking at some old mobile games. Growing up, there was a large portion of my childhood where my family didn't have a video game console at all, and when we finally did get a Wii, I was only allowed to play it for a few hours a week. What does this mean? It means I played a lot of frickin' mobile games. I was constantly playing mobile games when I had any free time. Nowadays, I almost never play games on my phone anymore, mostly because the quality of the games has become questionable. I mean, even the ads are way worse than they used to be. So I thought it'd be fun to go back and look at some of the old mobile games I used to play so much, and see if they're still fun. So I have 10 games I'll be going over today. Most of these are super popular and you've probably played them yourself, or at least heard of them. But I'm also including one of my favorite hidden gems that not nearly enough people talk about today. Now let's not waste any more time and get right into the first game. Let's start with one of the mobile games I spent the most time on, Geometry Dash. This 2D platformer only requires one input, simply tapping the screen to the beat of the music. And if you die, you get sent all the way back to the start. This one can feel frustrating at first, but the more you practice, the better you get. And once you finally start perfectly playing through levels alongside the terrific soundtrack, it feels pretty dang good. Even after all these years, I can still complete the first few levels in one try, and that's because of how many times I replayed them when I was younger. These songs and level layouts have basically been permanently burned into my brain. It's really cool how the platforming is timed with the music. This game is really good at making you feel like a pro, even though it's really just as simple as remembering where to tap or not tap. But later levels actually do get pretty complicated, and I can never make it very far in these high skill ones. Luckily, there is a practice mode where you can place down checkpoints and spend time on the most difficult parts, so you can do it for real without any mistakes. There's a basic achievement and customization system that adds some nice replayability to the game, but really most of the fun comes from just playing the well-designed levels. For some reason, there were 3 spin-off games, Geometry Dash World, Sub-Zero, and Meltdown. I'm not sure if all these spin-offs are combined in the full version, and I'm not willing to pay $2 to find out. The free version does have some annoying ads when you die, but thankfully the old turn off the internet trick still works to get an ad-free experience. This one was a lot of fun to go back to, and I still enjoyed playing it after all this time. It can be a little too punishing at times and gets old after a couple hours, but overall Geometry Dash has held up really well and is a great way to start this video. The Endless Runner is one of the most popular genres of mobile games, and one of the most easily recognizable ones is Subway Surfers. After spray painting the side of a train car, this cop and his dog chase after you and you try to survive as long as possible. I think what made this game so popular is its level of polish. The animations and visuals look really great, and the music is super catchy as well. I played a lot of this one back in the day, but sadly it's changed quite a bit since then. There's all these world tour things that change the environment, which is a cool idea, but you can only play one at a time and there's no way to switch between them as far as I can tell. But at least there's a way to change the music. The different designs of the world are pretty cool, but they all share the same basic structure, and it doesn't take long for sections to be repeated. At least there's some cool items that help make things more exciting. The world tour idea would be a lot better if the level design actually changed with each one, and you should be able to select which one you want from a select screen. I had to download a bunch of previous versions of this game just to get some visual variety in the gameplay, but it's pretty much all exactly the same when you're playing it. The gameplay is still a lot of fun, but I had no real desire to earn all the unlockables since it takes so much grinding just to get a simple skin. It's also pretty hard to navigate this mess of a menu, especially with the constant ads popping up telling you to spend money. There's also some sort of battle pass system or something, as well as a whole bunch of other unnecessary additions. This game is kind of sad because the core gameplay and visual style is great, but there's just so many layers of typical mobile game stuff thrown on top of it for some reason. I wish there was a way to go back and play the version I remember from years ago, because I don't think it was this annoying. These same developers made another game called Blades of Brim, which is honestly a much better experience, and is overall a lot more interesting. I still like Subway Surfers for its unique identity and really fun gameplay, but sadly all the new additions they've added over the years have made it a lot less enjoyable. An endless runner that holds up really well is Jetpack Joyride. I was kind of scared after Subway Surfers that this game would have changed a lot too, but nope, this one is still as great as ever. The gameplay feels pretty much unchanged, where you blast into a secret science lab and steal a jetpack, then try to last as long as possible while dodging lasers, missiles, and brutally killing plenty of innocent scientists. There's something that's just so satisfying about using the jetpack in this game, and learning how to time it just right to avoid all the obstacles is really rewarding. This game gives you special power-ups, missions, and plenty of coins to keep things interesting. The power-ups are awesome and a ton of fun. You can get a gravity suit that changes which way you fall, a crazy freaking teleporter that shoots all over the place, a money-making bird that's probably a reference to another game in this video, and a huge fire-breathing dragon named Mr. Cuddles. And for some reason when Barry is riding the motorcycle, he just straight up shoots the scientists in the face with a shotgun, which seems a little violent? What did these guys do to him? One thing I really love about this game is the sense of progression. Each run will give you plenty of coins, so unlocking new outfits, jetpacks, and power-ups never feels too far away. Just a couple solid runs and you'll have more than enough coins to buy some new stuff from the shops. Having actually decently priced items is something mobile games are really bad at, so it's great to see that here. This game does have ads, but first they give you this pop-up where your only two options are to pay to get rid of them, or click I love ads, after which it immediately gives you an ad. There's just so much personality in this game, thanks largely to the really high quality pixel artwork that still looks great. In my opinion, this is the best Endless Runner mobile game to this day, and it definitely holds up in the modern age. Angry Birds is one of the most popular mobile games of all time, so popular that it ended up spawning 2 animated movies somehow. The name of the game is Destruction, blowing up these green pigs' bases while taking them out because they stole some eggs. There's something so satisfying about pulling back on the slingshot and launching a bird at the fort, and then seeing everything collapse from there. The different types of birds add some nice variety, giving you different options in how you approach each level. There's a lot of experimentation required if you want to beat a level, and since you can't see the trajectory of your birds before you launch them, it's basically just a game of guess and check. It can feel pretty good when everything works together and you take it all down with fewer birds than you were given, but it can also quickly devolve into restarting the level constantly to try and get the perfect game. There is a ridiculous amount of levels to beat, which means not all of them are designed very well. Most of them are great, but there are a few that just feel poorly made and are way more difficult than the rest that follow. The original game definitely shows its age today, but it can still be fun once you get a hang of it. The sequel, Angry Birds 2, is probably a better experience overall. This series is basically the king of spin-off games. There's Angry Birds Space, Rio, Star Wars, Epic, and so many more. My personal favorites have to be Angry Birds Transformers, Angry Birds Go, and Bad Piggies. Transformers is a pretty straightforward on-rails shooter, but the reason I liked it so much was just because of how cool the designs and animations are. Angry Birds Go is a full-on kart racer that's actually really fun, and the slingshot concept translates perfectly into this genre. And Bad Piggies has you building makeshift vehicles to try and get to the end of levels while protecting your pig, which is way more entertaining than it has any right to be. Plus it has a pretty fantastic theme song too. So I guess at the end of the day, all the Angry Birds spin-offs have kind of outshined the original games. Oh, and I also own this Angry Birds plush for some reason, and I don't know why or how I got this. And I also forgot to mention some of the other Angry Birds games like
No! No! No!
Next up is another bird game that took the world by storm for like a month, Flappy Bird. This game has actually been removed from most platforms because it became so popular that it started ruining the developer's life, but thanks to the internet I can just download it anyway. I remember everyone playing this game on the bus to school, and all of us freaking out if someone got above 30. Also, I'm pretty sure Fireflies by Owl City was playing in the background. I still don't fully understand the Flappy Bird craze. I guess it got so popular because of how difficult and addicting it was. But playing it today, it just doesn't hit the same. It's still very hard and frustrating, but I wouldn't consider it an insanely addicting app that's a danger to our children. There's no in-game rewards or daily bonuses, no battle pass or coin system, so it's funny that everyone was so scared of it being addicting. Ah, early 2014, when the world's biggest problem was apparently Flappy Bird. Compared to mobile games today, this game is pretty tame. I think the key to this game's success is its sound design. These harsh arcadey sounds are probably what pushes people to keep playing. Hitting a pipe is such an unsatisfying conclusion to your run, so it makes you want to try again. I played this game for a while, but it doesn't take long for it to lose its charm. It's a simple little challenging mobile game, but I think the most interesting thing about it was the insane reaction of the internet at the time. There are plenty of myths about what happens at 999 points, and since no one will ever get that far, no one can prove it wrong. Flappy Bird is a decent time waster if you want something entertaining for like 2 minutes, and it's fun to look back on. but it's even more entertaining to look back in time and see sites like IGN giving totally serious reviews about this dumb game.
138, there were times where I realized I had actually forgotten to breathe. That's quite a psychological trick for a game to pull off.
Temple Run is yet another endless runner, but this time you're this treasure hunter explorer dude running away from some evil monkeys. This one is kind of unique because you actually have to tilt your phone using motion controls to move left and right. That, combined with the cool visual style and satisfying sounds of collecting coins, makes this one pretty fun. Once you last long enough, you'll eventually start getting jumps or sharp turns into obstacles that are basically impossible to avoid, which can be annoying, but overall I like the much faster speed of gameplay. Tripping on a branch will make the monkeys get right up behind you, which always freaked me out as a kid. There's also these funny little pictures that show up when you die that change depending on how you met your end. Although sadly the sheer amount of coins you need to collect to unlock new characters is just crazy. 2,500 coins for definitely not Indiana Jones? No thank you. I remember playing this game for literal hours and hours one time on a road trip, and when I finally stopped playing, put the phone down and looked up, the car was pulling up to a turn and I instinctively swiped my finger to turn around the corner. Then I just looked down at my hands and thought, well that's not good. This game did get a sequel that was pretty good, adding more variety to the gameplay with minecarts, water slides, and even entire new areas. It also has these really creepy looking versions of Bruce Lee and Usain Bolt for some reason. The animations and world graphics are a lot better in the sequel, so it's probably the one to play these days, although the original gives me the most nostalgia. This one still holds up pretty well, but it is really simple. Temple Run is a good time, but Jetpack Joyride still beats it when it comes to endless runners. Okay, I don't think I can go any longer without talking about my personal favorite mobile game of all time, Sortigo. Sortigo is like a classic 2D Zelda platforming adventure game with a big map to explore, dungeons to complete, bosses to fight, and items to collect. It has kind of an N64 blocky look to the visuals that I think looks great, and the platforming and combat feel really good once you get used to them. This was that one game for me that I just loved playing, and I would always go back to it no matter how many other apps I downloaded. Sortigo might be missing the high level of polish that most other games in this video have, but it also plays like an actual video game. There's a solid item progression system, a very basic but still interesting story, and an ending to work towards. The basic setup is that your master gets killed by some evil magic dude, and you have to travel across the land to collect the broken pieces of a legendary sword to save the world. The dungeons have some pretty decent puzzles to solve, and the overworld has all sorts of secret passages and hidden rooms with treasure chests. This game plays out like a Metroidvania, where you slowly get more abilities and items that make you way more powerful, so by the end of the game you're this unstoppable warrior and it feels fantastic. There's lots of diverse sections of the map, with multiple different enemy types for each one. Now is this game actually objectively good? I have no idea. I have so much nostalgia for this game that I am incapable of looking at it objectively. For a kid who had very limited console game time, Sortigo was my go-to when I wanted to play something that felt grander and more important than your typical mobile game. It's probably the first game in this genre that I ever played, and it's still one of my personal favorites. I specifically remember the first time I figured out how to get into this locked house in the overworld, where you have to carry some pots over and stack them so you can jump higher. I felt like an absolute genius, and it was one of the coolest moments in gaming I've ever had, as simple as it sounds. I don't know if anyone else watching has actually played this game, or if it made this big of an impact on other people. Sortigo is just very important to me, as it's one of the first games I played that gave me that rewarding gameplay and magical feeling of immersion that I still look for in games to this day. The next game, Fruit Ninja, has you slicing fruit in the air before they fall back down, avoiding bombs, and trying to get a high score. When I first re-downloaded this app, it's totally different now. The menu is an absolute mess and there's microtransactions everywhere. The actual gameplay is pretty much the same, but I really don't like this new layer of typical mobile game paint. Luckily, you can buy a classic version that's way more like what I remember. It's a lot of fun to replay the classic mode to try and get a higher score. Slicing fruit out of the air will never get old. The sound design of cutting fruit in half is great, and getting multiple hits with just one swipe feels amazing. The pomegranate is like a special bonus fruit that lets you swipe back and forth really fast to get some extra points, which is super stylish and fun. Getting to 100 points will even give you back one of your 3 lives, so you're always encouraged to keep trying. There's also some side modes like Arcade where the fruit falling doesn't matter, and bombs just take 10 seconds off the clock. This mode is all about hitting as many fruit as possible, and special bananas will freeze down time or give you a frenzy of fruit from all sides. Zen mode is like Arcade but without the crazy special fruits or any bombs, so you can just relax and focus on cutting up some apples and strawberries. And finally, there's split-screen multiplayer you can play with someone sitting across from you. There's some new dojos and blades for you to unlock, but honestly this game is so fun by itself that I don't even really need the incentive of unlockables to want to keep playing. This is pretty much peak simple mobile game design, where it just focuses on one thing and does that really well. Fruit Ninja still holds up great today, and it's one of my favorites to play for a couple minutes in between other activities. Back to talking about endless runners, the last one in this genre I have to cover today is Hill Climb Racing. This game is all about upgrading your vehicle so you can make it farther in each stage, with super weird and floaty controls. The controls are very strange on purpose, so that it takes a long time to learn how to use them. Your acceleration and braking also determine your movement in the air, which takes a while to get used to, but once you finally do get a hang of it, it actually feels pretty good to balance the movement so you don't land on your head. Especially once you unlock the moon, which has low gravity so you can just earn endless airtime points. There's lots of crazy vehicles to unlock, like a hippie van or Segway. Each type is useful in different ways, so you can build something that works for you, with options for specific tuning of the parts you want to upgrade most. For example, the hippie van is really durable, but it also burns gas really quickly. At the beginning you progress pretty consistently while unlocking new stuff, but it doesn't take long for this game to turn pretty grindy. And one thing that becomes super annoying is the music. This song is decent, but it plays on basically every single stage. The snow, the desert, the highway, and even on the moon. I know there are a few stages that have a different song, but the majority of them just have this one theme and it gets old real fast. For most of my playtime I just muted the music. Each stage has different goals for you to try and reach, as well as keeping track of the farthest you've ever made it. It feels really good to go flying by your previous record with a new car that's more upgraded. Like most of the other games so far, this one also got a sequel that seems to be improved in most areas, and that one is actually about racing other people. Hill Climb Racing is a lot of fun. Collecting coins and upgrading your vehicle is a really entertaining loop that can keep you playing for hours. Just make sure to mute the music to protect your sanity. And the last mobile game I'll be talking about in this video is Shadow Fight 2, a fighting game with a unique art style that looks terrific. The mechanics in this game have a surprising amount of depth. Well, at least they feel like they do, but I pretty much just click random buttons the whole time. But even doing that still makes you feel like a super cool ninja warrior. I used to play this one a lot, but I never actually got very far. I don't even know if I beat the first major boss, but just restarting and replaying the early levels was enough to entertain me. There's lots of awesome gear to unlock, like new weapons and armor. Practicing what combos work well with what weapons and then doing that in a fight feels great. The music is also surprisingly good, and it gets you in the mood for an epic showdown. The thing I like about this game is that when you're winning, it feels like you're absolutely destroying your opponent and beating them up brutally, and when you're losing, the same thing happens to you. This bar at the top rewards combos and getting consecutive hits, so once someone gets going it's really hard to stop them, which I really like. It feels more high stakes and realistic. Headshots and near misses have this slow motion effect on the gameplay which looks amazing. I love the silhouettes of the fighters in the foreground and the beautiful backdrops behind them. It's a really interesting look that not many other games have. Another game from the same developer called Vector has a very similar look, only that one is a parkour platformer game set in a futuristic city. I played that one a lot too, but Shadow Fight 2 was always a lot more replayable to me. They did end up releasing Shadow Fight 3, which has weirdly super high budget graphics that kind of lose what made this one look so good. I much prefer the graphics of Shadow Fight 2 over 3 personally. This is another one that aged very well. It's still really entertaining and impressive to this day. I'm not very familiar with mobile fighting games, but I think Shadow Fight 2 is one of the best ones out there from a visual and gameplay perspective. And that's the end of this nostalgia rewind on some old mobile games. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with how well these games have held up. They're all pretty similar honestly, and in a lot of ways I don't really miss my days of mobile game playing, but there's some great experiences from the past that deserve to be remembered. I don't think I'll suddenly start playing games on my phone again, but it was a lot of fun to revisit the apps that I used to pour so much time into. There are so many more mobile games I could cover, but I have to stop somewhere. I'm sure I wasn't able to talk about all the mobile games that you feel nostalgic for yourself, so go down to the comments and let me know what your favorite mobile gaming memories are. Now I'm going to go back to playing games that aren't endless runners. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see ya in the next one.